Welcome or welcome back to my channel. I'm Hannah Blackwell, and today I'm going to be sharing with you some witchy book recommendations. I'm really excited for this video because you guys know I love me some witchy books. I love all things witchy. I feel I am myself a bit witchy.
Okay, I'm a witch!
I just really like anything that has to do with the occult or with like even just like rom-com witchy vibes, magical vibes, or anything to do with historical witchy, all the way to like paganism and just basically beyond. Anything witchy is my jam. Today I have 14 book recommendations for you that are all witchy books, from romance to horror to cozy to fantasy, everything in between. And I have a really good mashup here of all different kinds of books that have those witchy vibes. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I would love to have you do so. All of my social media is linked down below in the description, including my Goodreads, Instagram, Twitter, the link to my Etsy shop where I sell seasonal and bookish bookmarks, as well as the link to my Patreon and the Hideaway, which is a Discord which I share with my good friend Maggie. Don't forget to give this video a like if you like it, and comment down below and give me some of your witchy book recommendations. Okay, so let's just go ahead and get into this video. I'm going to start with some spooky witchy reads, and the first one I have here is Slew Foot by Brom. I really liked this book. This is a horror fantasy that is set in colonial times. Our heroine, she is married, but she's kind of an outcast in her community. This takes place during like colonial times and witch hunts are happening. She really doesn't fit into the community, and when her husband passes away and her brother-in-law wants her land, things get quite messy. She meets this forest spirit named Slew Foot and some other really creepy spirits, and things get really scary and crazy from there. Brom's imagination is just amazing. This book is very unique, and it plays on the natural spirits that have been worshipped on the land forever versus the new colonists who kind of like trampling all over the worship. So it does have a lot to say about colonization of the Americas, nature versus colonization, about religion. So just know that going in. I loved this book. Make sure you check your trigger warnings before you read it. Brom is also an illustrator, and that's one of my favorite parts about this is the illustrations. He's just an amazing artist. And even like the page numbers have spiders on them, which really creep me out. Like some of the page breaks, they have spiders. Kind of creepy. But yeah, this is a really good one if you want something that is historical fantasy and horror at the same time. I don't want to say too much. So Legacy Witches by Cass K is a self-published book. I actually got to interview Cass K on my channel like a long while back. I've read the first 2 books in the series. That's all that's out so far. It's kind of like a cozy horror urban paranormal mystery series, and I think each book has its own mystery element, but there's an overarching plot, and it's cozy, but there are some fairly horrific and possibly triggering scenes in here too, so just make sure you check the triggers as well. This actually has amazing witchy vibes in here. Our heroine is a witch, and she moves back to Salem, where her family is from. She's from a very old family of witches, and they are kind of like darker witches. Like there are like ghosts, and she can see the ghosts and the ghosts of her ancestors too that live at the house. These aren't good ghosts. These women were actually like a little bit evil. Her mother was quite evil. So it's not like good witches in the situation, but our heroine wants to be different. It's really interesting, but yeah, make sure you check your triggers. This is just really cool though. I loved it. I loved the mystery. I think that there's going to be like this romantic subplot that overarches through the series. It's not really gotten going yet, but you're getting the vibes it might get going. And I'm definitely rooting for that couple. I'm looking forward to seeing where this series goes. And I haven't seen a lot of people read it, but I really want them to because I just had so much fun with this. And I honestly feel like this is just the perfect book to read in fall. I think actually this takes place in the spring. The second book I think takes place in fall and has more fall vibes, but I really loved it. I loved this book so freaking much. And I think that she actually signed this for me. Yeah, she signed it to me and it's like personalized, which is so freaking sweet. I loved this book so much. If you're looking for a cozy horror, urban, paranormal mystery to get into, this is a series, please check this one out. It's an absolute favorite of mine. I forgot to say too, I'm not sure if I said, but the witchy vibes are like on point. Like she has this like magical witchy room where she does magic and it talks about all the ingredients she has and the potions and all of that too. Like it goes in detail over like the witchy stuff, which is something that I really like. Okay, next let's talk about a few witchy romances. Okay, so the first I have here is Don't Hex and Drive by Juliet Cross. Now this is technically the second book in the series because the first book is The Wolf Gone Wild, and you could definitely read that too, and that is witchy. Each book in this series follows a different sister, and I just happen to be not the hugest fan of the first book because I didn't like the hero, Mateo, who is a shifter, but I adored the hero in Don't Hex and Drive, who is a vampire. But yeah, it's up to you. If you're planning on reading the whole series, you might start with Wolf Gone Wild, but I just wanted to point out that I adored Don't Hex and Drive, and this is like my ultimate recommendation for like a witchy rom-com. Yeah, so this is like a hate to love situation. We have our heroine who is a bit almost like agoraphobic. She has a lot of anxiety. She has anxiety about getting into cars, and one day she actually just gets hit by a car, and the car is being driven by our hero, Devraj, and he accidentally hits her with his car, and he drives her home, and she basically hates him from there. He is also super swoony. He used to be a Bollywood actor. He's very swoon worthy. He is a people person. He is very outgoing and he just gets along with everyone. And she also doesn't really like that about him, that he basically is, everyone's obsessed with him. And she's like, he hit me with his car. He sucks. So anyway, this is a romance between them. And let me say, Devraj is the ultimate like male love interest. There is a scene, a very long scene, might I add, in this book that lives in my head rent-free. If you've read it, you know. Everyone needs a Devraj in their life, you know what I'm saying? Read this book if you're looking for a really steamy, witchy rom-com because it's a good one. Okay, next we have Gothicana by Rue Nix. This is a completely different vibe, so a whole nother side of the spectrum in terms of witchy romance. This is a gothic, dark academia, dark romance, and with the witchy vibes, our heroine is not necessarily a witch, but she's witchy. She does tarot very well. There's also these kind of paranormal witchy vibes going on just throughout the whole book. So I definitely would count this as witchy vibe. This is also a dark romance. It is teacher student, so just know that going in. There's the age gap and then also just the forbidden relationship. I like this book a lot. I had a really good time with this. I definitely recommend it. If you are looking for a dark academia with a lot of smut, then this would be a good one. So some more steamy witchy times. I have, whoa, of Trader Witch by Mary Mystery. This is a Why Choose series. This is the first book in the Deadwood. I feel like I always say Deadwood Chronicles in my head, but this is Why Choose. It's about this lunar witch and her finding her fated mates, which are this crew of pirates. They're all different creatures. So there's a vampire, there's a ice fae, there are shifters, there is a warlock. There's all sorts in here. The witchy vibes in this are really good too. So when this book starts out, our heroine's actually framed for murder of her like coven mother. and the coven mother of the solar coven too. So she's like on the run and wants to figure out what actually happened and who actually killed these women. And so she ends up on the ship with these pirates, and it goes from there. But she's actually undercover as a solar witch, and solar witches are basically like nuns. Like, they're not the free-spirited lunar witches at all. They don't party. They're basically nuns. They are celibate, and so she's kind of like undercover as them. The first book in the series is not super spicy. Like, there's steam building for sure, but there's not like a bunch of spice. So just know that going in. But this series gets quite spicy. It's very slow burn though. So yeah. There also has a lot of a fantasy plot, and there's like a war building and all of that going on too, but with like spicy times in between. So I thought this was a really fun one if you're looking for a really fun plot with your witchy steam. Let's get into some cozy fantasy romance, cozy fantasies. I've got two. And the first one is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. I just read this, and it might actually be my favorite book of the year. It literally gave me everything I wanted in both a witchy book and a just book in general. This was so cozy, so sweet. It made me cry. I loved the found family and the relationships that were built in here. I loved everything that had to say about dealing and healing from childhood wounds and trauma and negative familial relations. I just really, really, really liked everything it had to say. And it was just beautiful. So we follow our heroine, who is acting like a witch online on her YouTube channel, but she really is actually a witch. She's just thinking that that's the best way to be undercover, but still find some social connection, because she also, in this society, cannot be hanging out with other witches. So witches have to stay separate from each other, because too much power can gather if witches congregate. So they only meet every 3 months or so, and she calls this group that gets together the Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, but that's just kind of like her inner monologue name for them. Anyway, one day she gets contacted by these people that say, hey, can you come here to Nowhere House? We have an opportunity for you as a witch. So they know she's a witch, and they have these 3 little witches there that they want her to teach. And it's just so sweet. This is like House in the Cerulean Sea meets practical magic. It just hit everything so hard for me. I cried at the end because I didn't want it to end. I wasn't ready to leave these people and this world. This was the first book in a really long time that I came so close to literally just rereading immediately. I loved it. If you haven't read this and you like witchy books or rom-com or cozy fantasy, please read it, because it's honestly one of my favorite cozy fantasies and just general favorite cozy books of all time. The witchy vibes are impeccable too. I loved it. It was very bewitched feeling too. So yeah. Highly, highly recommend. For another witchy, cozy fantasy romance, I have Keeper of the Enchanted Rooms. Now, I wouldn't say this is fantasy romance. I would more say this is a cozy fantasy with a mystery subplot and a romance subplot. That's more like how I would probably categorize this. So this is actually, I think, perfect for getting us into the next category, which is going to be fantasy and historical fantasy. So this is historical too. This follows our main character who inherits this house, and he is a writer. So he gets there. It's a magical house, and this woman shows up, and she is part of this league or company or group or whatever that is in charge of helping people move into magical houses, because magical houses, there's like less and less every year, and there's less magic every year. So she is a witch too, and there are certain like witches that have certain magical abilities. And so she can use those abilities on the house and in the house to help him get kind of like acclimated and help figure out, okay, How magical is this house? Is it a danger to the inhabitants, etc., etc. This house has some serious personality, and that was like one of my favorite aspects of this book. There's also a mystery subplot. Check your triggers too, because there is like this evil bad guy, but who has kind of like a really rough family history. So there are triggers for childhood abuse by a family member. This was just really, it was cozy. This house is set on this island, very isolated. There's found family. There's this really funny chef too that he hires on. It's got those witchy vibes, but in a different kind of way. Like Emily Wilde, if you've ever read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I don't know how to explain it. But it like normalizes the magic the way Emily Wilde does. Okay. I just thought this was really good. I think if you did like Emily Wilde, you'll like this. If you like fairies as much as you like witches, yeah, it's a whole different take on witches too. So here I have Dreamer's Pool by Juliette Marillier. This is the first book in the Blackthorn and Grimm series. Blackthorn is the heroine in, well, I don't know if I would say heroine, but she's the female main character in this book. And she is in prison, and Grimm is in prison too. They didn't know each other prior to prison, but they're there for different reasons. She has it in for the Laird, who basically unalived her whole family, including, just check the triggers. Just check the triggers. So she escapes one day by bargaining with a fae. And Grimm gets out with her, goes with her, and she has made this bargain that she will go to the region and she will help anyone that asks for it. And so she sets up, she is a wise woman, so very Green Witch vibes. She can make healing potions, healing salves, but also knows of actual magic, very like realistic, kind of like I was saying with Emily Wilde. There are some very magical elements in this, but they are made to be almost like normalized, and is witchy too as a wise woman, but it has a lot of those like paganism and herbalism themes throughout too. It's also a mystery series, so each book actually has a different mystery. So kind of fun, very unique to have like a historical fantasy mystery series, but there is a mystery in each one of these, and Blackthorn and Grimm kind of get known for solving these unsolvable mysteries. There's a romance in each one of these too, but it's not like super steamy or anything like that. It's a very clean romance. The cover is flipping gorgeous. The cover for each one of these books is beautiful. Check out the third book in this series I have here, Den of Wolves. Gorgeous. So freaking pretty. It's also a very like cottagecore vibe. So yeah, if you're looking for like the Green Witch, cottagecore witch, cottage witch, forest witch kind of vibes, that's where you're going to find them. You're also going to get a little bit of those vibes too with the Book of Gothel, which is another historical fantasy with witchy vibes. This is a retelling of Mother Gothel, a bit of a villain origin story. It's up to you really decide the truth of the matter, right? This one also is set in the forest. Our heroine is named Hailweiss, and she's not really understood or liked in the community. And when her mother passes away, she kind of goes on this mission. She's abandoned by her father, who remarries, and she kind of goes on this mission to discover her mother's religion and to discover the truth behind some things that her mother said and gave her. And she ending up at this tower, and she meets another character there, and things go on from there. It is a very, it's a hard book to summarize because it is not plot driven. It is not at all plot driven. This is just pure character and atmosphere driven book. The descriptions in here are beautiful. There's descriptions of food and gardens and the forest. And like I said, very forest witch, cottage witch for sure. And there are some descriptions of magic. And it's a lot of the conflict being paganism versus Catholicism. And I loved this book so much. I think let's talk middle grade real quick, okay? Because I have a final book. Actually, I have two books. Both of these books I would say give cottagecore witch. The first one is going to be The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. I adored this book. This is about, there's this like town on the edge of this forest, and they sacrifice children every year or so, I think. And there's this witch who pulls from the stars every year to give to the children that she's saving. But one year she accidentally pulls from the moon, and she decides to keep this girl now because she's drank from the moon and she has magic. And I don't, it's really hard to describe, but 100% foresty, hedge witch, cottage witch vibes. But it's also going to really, really affect you. This book made me cry. It was a little bit hard to read as a mother, I will say that. So if you're not in a place, depending on your whatever's going on in your life, and you may be triggered by anything relating to harm to children, then it may not be the book for you. But it's done in a very soft way. I mean, this is a middle grade book, so it's written for kids. And I thought it was done very well. But there is that, because you do have the society that is sacrificing children, and then the pain of the parents, and then what's happening to these children. And it's so good. There is found family, there is magic, there are these woodsy, foresty vibes. There's a mystery element as well. Sorry if my synopsis for this one was kind of like weird. It's been a little bit since I read it, but also I feel like I can't remember what's a spoiler and what's not. Just check it out. I highly recommend it. I highly recommend it. Kelly Barnhill's writing is like top tier. Next, I have another middle grade, and this is A Pinch of Magic by Michelle Harrison. So this book is about the Witterson sisters and the Witterson family. They live in this tavern, like on the upstairs of this tavern. They run this tavern on this like island surrounded by like these like marshes. It's got major fall vibes for sure. And it's kind of like near this prison, and there's this curse on this family, and they cannot leave this island. Each of these girls have been given or handed down a magical object. There's a carpet bag, there is a mirror, there are these nesting dolls, and they can each use said object only for its specific purpose. But they really want to be able to leave the island, so they decide to set out to break the curse. And things go kind of haywire from there, as you can imagine. This is a very cozy, sweet, very witchy, whimsical, and a little bit spooky and atmospheric book. Very cottagecore, but in a watery, not foresty cottagecore. Does that make sense? Because like it feels very stormy and cold and wet and salty air kind of vibes. If I don't know how to describe that, almost like gloomy, but like in a magical way. And it was really good. I highly recommend. It makes me want to reread this book and then read the next one, but I'm kind of waiting too, because I'm thinking I might be able to read this to at least Jonah in the next couple of years maybe. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to reread it now or later, but I definitely do want to continue on this series. There's at least 3 or 4 books in this series. So I do have a couple of cozy mystery witchy books for you. The first is Curse the Day by Annabelle Chase. This is set in a town that's very similar, like Halloween Town, but it's for adults. And this one I read a couple of years ago. It's not like amazing. This is very like a moderate 3-star cozy mystery if you're in the mood for cozy mysteries. And I usually find that cozies hit that 3, maybe 4-star mark for me, but it feels good when I'm reading them. Like I read them when I want to read them, but I don't think I've ever read a cozy mystery that was just straight cozy mystery that was a 5-star, you know? Just for me. This was worth it if you read it when you're in the mood for a paranormal cozy. So we have this woman, she's driving, and then I think she like hits something or gets in an accident, and then she looks and she sees this guy that she thinks is about to unalive himself. And so she goes to try to help him, ends up going into the border of this town without realizing it. If you are magical, once you've entered this town, you cannot leave this town. So she saves this guy. He's an angel, and he takes her back to the town, and she basically is stuck there. She has to figure out what to do with her life. She is a lawyer, so she ends up helping out in the defense attorney's office. And she has to make a life there now. She needs to take classes because now she's discovered that she's a witch. And so she has to take classes to learn how to use her abilities. And there are also some romantic elements that are really fun too. Some romantic subplots, some dates, just some fun. And there's all kinds of creatures in here too, but it's very Halloween Town. The feelings are very Halloween Town-esque, and like I said, no one can leave this. So the town is cursed. No one can leave the town. And I think this is really fun. I've read the first 2 books. I still might continue on. I don't know. It's just a fun, quick, enjoyable time. And my final book on this list is A Spell for Trouble by Esme Addison. This one is another cozy. This is actually set in a coastal town off North Carolina, and I really liked that because I live in North Carolina, and that was just fun for me. And there is this group of witches. They own an apothecary shop out in the open, so people don't know, like, the magic isn't out in the open, right? They kind of still have to keep it hidden, but there is also people that do know, if that makes sense. They are actually, you find out in the first book, I don't think this is a spoiler, it's a cozy mystery that it's not, but they're actually descendant from like sirens or something like that. So it's got like a water witch element. So these are kind of like ocean witches or water witches. And that's really fun too with their apothecary shop. So they do potions and things like that. And it's a cozy mystery series. So I can't remember what the mystery is in this one. Usually I think it's actually like, I think her aunt gets framed. So that is it. Those are the 14 witchy recommendations that I have for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that this was a good, well-rounded list for you so that you could find something that you were looking for, whether it was spooky or rom-com or cottage witchy or middle grade or whatever it was that you were looking for. I hope I had something like that here on this list for you. If you like this video, don't forget to click the like button and comment down below. Give me your recommendations for some good witchy reads. I'm always looking for more. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I'd love to have you do so. All of my social media is linked down below in the description, including my Goodreads Instagram, Twitter, the link to my Etsy shop where I sell bookish bookmarks and seasonal bookmarks, and the link to my Patreon and the Discord or the hideaway that I share with my friend Maggie. Until next time, fellow readers, keep reading and living your best life.